Every single day, you see it happen. On your wall clock, your watch, microwaves, school clocks, train station clocks. The hands always move in the same direction, to the right, around and around, clockwise. But here's the strange part. There's absolutely no natural reason clocks had to move that way. Think about it. The first people who invented clocks could have made them move the opposite direction, counterclockwise. And if they had, that would feel completely normal to us today. In fact, there are places in the world where some clocks actually do move backward. And when people first see them, their brains almost short-circuit. Because after centuries of repetition, your brain now treats clockwise motion as something deeply natural, even though it's completely invented. So who decided clocks should move this way? Why didn't they go left instead? And why does this direction secretly connect modern clocks to something humans used thousands of years ago? To answer that, we need to go back to a time before electricity, before gears, before clocks even existed. Long before humans built clocks, we used shadows. Imagine living thousands of years ago. No phones, no wristwatches, no digital timers. If you wanted to know the time, you looked at the sun. Ancient civilizations discovered something fascinating. If you placed a stick upright into the ground, its shadow moved during the day. Morning shadows stretched one way, afternoon shadows stretched the other, and slowly humans realized something incredible. The sun could act like a giant natural clock. This led to one of history's oldest timekeeping inventions, the sundial. A sundial worked using a fixed object called a gnomon, basically a stick or triangular piece casting a shadow. As the sun moved across the sky, the shadow rotated around the dial. And here's the critical detail. In the northern hemisphere, the shadow moved from left to right, the exact same direction modern clocks move today, clockwise. At the time, nobody called it clockwise, of course, because clocks didn't exist yet. But the direction became deeply associated with the movement of time itself. And centuries later, when mechanical clocks were finally invented, engineers copied the motion people already recognized from sundials. Without realizing it, ancient sunlight had just shaped the future of every clock on Earth. But here's where the story gets strange, because the direction of a sundial's shadow depends on where you are on Earth. In the southern hemisphere, the shadow moves the opposite way, counterclockwise. That means if ancient mechanical clocks had first been invented in places like Australia, South Africa, Argentina, our clocks today might actually run backward. Seriously. What feels normal to your brain may simply be an accident of geography. And that's the fascinating part. Human civilization didn't randomly choose clockwise motion. It inherited it from ancient northern hemisphere cultures where early engineering and astronomy developed. The Romans, the Egyptians, medieval Europeans, their sundials shaped their understanding of time. And eventually, their clocks shaped the rest of the world. So in a weird way, every clock around you is still following the movement of ancient shadows across the ground. A design choice created thousands of years before modern technology existed. But that still doesn't explain one thing. Once clocks became mechanical, why didn't inventors decide to redesign them completely? Why keep copying a shadow? The answer comes down to something surprisingly powerful: human psychology. Humans are creatures of habit. Once your brain learns a pattern, it wants that pattern to stay consistent forever. This is called cognitive familiarity, and clocks are one of the strongest examples of it. From childhood, you repeatedly learn that time moves clockwise. Your school clocks move clockwise. Your parents' watches move clockwise. Animated timers move clockwise. Even loading symbols on apps often rotate clockwise because it subconsciously feels correct. Over time, your brain builds a mental connection, clockwise EA forward progress. That's why backward-moving clocks feel deeply unsettling, not because they're wrong, but because they violate decades of conditioning inside your brain. In fact, psychologists have found that humans prefer familiar directional patterns even when there's no logical reason for them. Your brain values predictability more than efficiency. And once mechanical clocks spread across Europe, changing the direction would have caused chaos. Imagine retraining millions of people to read time backward. Schedules, navigation, astronomy, engineering, everything depended on consistent timekeeping. So even when technology evolved, the direction stayed locked in place, and eventually the term clockwise became part of human language itself. Today we use it everywhere. Turn clockwise, rotate clockwise, spin clockwise, all because ancient shadows moved a certain way. But here's the really fascinating part. Clockwise motion doesn't just affect clocks. It secretly shapes how humans design entire systems. Look around your home, you'll start noticing clockwise motion everywhere. Bottle caps tighten clockwise. Most screws tighten clockwise. Oven knobs increase temperature clockwise. Volume knobs often increase clockwise. Even combination locks in industrial machines use clockwise rotation patterns. And this isn't random. Once society standardized clockwise motion as forward or increase, designers started using it everywhere. Because familiar motion reduces confusion. If something rotates clockwise, your brain instinctively assumes it's progressing. Moving forward, increasing. Designers love this because it makes products easier to use without instructions. This is called learned behavior design. Humans unconsciously transfer expectations from one object to another, and clocks may have been one of the earliest systems to train that expectation globally. In other words, your wall clock quietly influenced centuries of product design. Even computer interfaces inherited the pattern. Circular loading animations, progress dials, timers. Many still rotate clockwise because it psychologically feels natural. But remember, none of this is truly natural. It only feels natural because humans repeated it for centuries. And once enough people accept a design, it becomes invisible until someone flips it backward. Then suddenly your brain notices everything. Believe it or not, backward clocks actually exist. Some are novelty products, others were created as experiments, and people who use them report something fascinating. At first, reading them feels almost impossible, even though the numbers are still there. Your brain suddenly struggles with something you've done your entire life. Why? Because your mind doesn't read clocks mathematically, it reads them through pattern memory. You aren't calculating hand positions every time. Your brain instantly recognizes familiar angles and motion. That's why you can glance at a clock for half a second and know the time, but reverse the direction, and your mental shortcuts collapse. Suddenly, even simple time reading feels exhausting. This shows how deeply designed patterns shape human thinking. The direction of a clock isn't just mechanical, it's psychological. And that's what makes this story so interesting. A tiny design decision made centuries ago became permanently wired into human culture. Not because it was objectively better, but because once billions of people accepted it, changing it became nearly impossible. Now here's the ironic part. Most modern clocks no longer need clockwise movement at all. Digital clocks don't use rotating hands. Phones display pure numbers. Smartwatches could animate in any direction. And yet, clockwise design still survives everywhere. Why? Because humans trust familiar systems. Even when old technology disappears, its design language remains. This happens constantly in history. For example, the save icon still looks like a floppy disk, even though many young people have never used one. Phone apps still use old telephone symbols. Electric cars sometimes include fake engine sounds because silence feels strange to drivers. And clocks work the same way. Clockwise motion became culturally embedded. It survived the original technology that created it, which means every analog clock today is carrying ancient history inside its design. A direct connection between modern humans and shadows moving across the ground thousands of years ago. That's pretty incredible when you think about it. The next time you look at a clock, remember this: its hands aren't moving clockwise because of science, or physics, or some universal law. They're moving that way because ancient humans once watched shadows move across the ground. That's it. A simple observation from thousands of years ago quietly shaped the design of nearly every clock on Earth. And eventually, it shaped human psychology itself. So much that today, clockwise motion feels deeply correct to your brain, even though it could have easily been the opposite. It's a reminder that many things we consider normal are really just inherited habits from the past. Tiny design choices repeated so many times they become invisible, until someone asks the question, "Wait, why is it like that?" And suddenly, an ordinary object becomes far more fascinating than it first appeared, because hidden inside almost every everyday object is a story most people never notice. And this one has been ticking beside humanity for thousands of years. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like, share it with someone who'd love this, and drop a comment below. It really helps us keep creating more videos like this for you. Your support means everything to the Daily Object team.